Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This amendment is simple. It would exempt individuals fleeing communist and totalitarian regimes from Section 104. We should exempt people fleeing communist and totalitarian dictatorships from this legislation and allow them to apply for asylum as our laws were intended. The underlying bill would bar individuals who cross the border between ports of entry from seeking asylum. This means individuals would be forced to wait in Mexico to cross the border and be processed. That would make people fleeing communist and totalitarian regimes sitting ducks for the cartels for exploitation, abuse, kidnapping, or murder.
Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Before we dive into today's clip, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of my breakdowns of what's going on in Congress. Trust me, you're going to want to stick around for this one, because Matt Gaetz just pressed Adam Schiff into a corner, and Schiff's answers tell you everything about why people don't trust career politicians in D.C. anymore.
We have seen what happens when people are forced to wait in Mexico for too long. Under the Remain in Mexico program, there were over 1,500 publicly reported cases of murder, rape, torture, kidnapping, and other violent assaults against migrants returned under the Remain in Mexico program. In fact, just last month, we saw what happens when vulnerable migrants are put at risk, when migrants in an immigration center in Ciudad Juarez were left to be burned alive. This is not the fate we want for anyone, and we don't want people fleeing totalitarian dictatorships like people fleeing Venezuela or Cuba or Nicaragua or Russia or China or Vietnam or elsewhere to have to face those kind of dangers. There was a time when my colleagues on the other side of the aisle claimed to oppose communism and totalitarian dictatorships and welcomed people fleeing those horrible regimes. The underlying bill suggests otherwise. I urge my colleagues to join in this amendment so that those fleeing asylum are not put at those fleeing persecution by these communist regimes are not put at additional risk by having to wait for long periods of time in dangerous places before they can lawfully apply for asylum.
Will the gentleman yield for a question?
With that, Mr. Chairman, I'll yield back.
Will you yield for the clarifying question?
You could seek your own recognition. I'm going to yield back to the chair.
The gentleman yields back. Does the gentleman seek recognition?
I guess so.
The point of order is withdrawn, and Mr. Gaetz is recognized.
Thank you. I yield to the sponsor. If the sponsor would be willing to engage in a colloquy with me, would you consider the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia to be a totalitarian dictatorship?
Mr. Gaetz, I give the same answer that Representative Lofgren gave before. These are not new terms of art. These are the terms used in current law. And so we are merely applying current law to protect people, and in particular, in this case, those that are fleeing communist dictatorships. If the gentleman, his objection is that this definition is overbroad.
No. Mr. Schiff, I yielded to me. I'm asking you a clarifying question.
If you would yield, if you would respond to my question, which is, if this amendment is narrowed to communist dictatorships, will you support it?
Well, again, Mr. Schiff, I'm just trying to understand what
I guess
your
your
amendment
answer
says.
is no, then, Mr. Gaetz.
Gaetz kept asking, what's the difference? Would someone fleeing Saudi Arabia be covered under Schiff's amendment? Schiff dodges, then read from a U.S. code that defines totalitarianism as essentially a one-party state with complete suppression of opposition. He tries to lawyer his way through it. But here's the kicker. When Gaetz asks if Schiff will actually support his own amendment narrowly applied to communism only, Schiff basically admits, no, I'm probably not going to support it either way. Boom. That's the tell. Schiff's passionate speech about protecting people from communism wasn't really about compassion at all. It was about political theater. Gaetz exposes that Schiff doesn't really care to define his terms consistently, doesn't really care about applying the same standards across the board, and frankly doesn't even seem committed to the amendment he proposed.
Well, that you perhaps assume too much, my
Then
friend,
your answer is
because
yes.
I'm asking what you mean by totalitarian dictatorship and just whether the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia would qualify. It's just a yes or no question.
Well, I certainly think...
Forgive me for not knowing the list that Ms. Lofgren...
Would you like an answer, Mr. Gaetz? I certainly consider Saudi Arabia to be a dictatorship. Yes, I do.
A totalitarian one?
Well, Mr. Gaetz, my question is, if your problem with this amendment is you think it's
Mr.
overbroad...
Schiff, I'm not stating a problem with the amendment. I am merely asking you what it means.
My question then, Mr. Gaetz, is will
what
you
is the
support
difference
it?
between a dictatorship and a totalitarian dictatorship?
My question...
Since Saudi Arabia is a dictatorship...
There is a difference between totalitarianism and dictatorship.
Well, sure, I'm asking you to explain the differences of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia.
That's really the question, Mr. Gaetz.
Why can't you just answer whether or not your amendment would apply to them?
Mr. Gaetz, this is just a rhetorical exercise.
It's a serious effort to understand whether or not your amendment applies to the kingdom.
If your question is sincere, which I know assumes too much, but if it is, then will you support the amendment confined to communist dictatorships? Yes or no, Mr. Gaetz?
I'm probably not going to support the amendment either way. That doesn't
well, there you go.
I don't want to know what it means.
Then what about all the rhetoric you constantly espouse about standing up to communism? Here you're saying someone fleeing communism, if they're interdicted between ports, then they will not qualify.
Right,
doesn't matter what kind of regime.
There is a mechanism by which one seeks asylum for those very reasons, and it's not showing up and creating an entire loophole in the asylum
system. So this whole thing about Saudi
system.
Arabia is just a red herring, right?
I'm just curious to know whether or not you consider them qualifying under the bill.
Your
and
curiosity,
I have
burned
appreciate 2.5 minutes.
Consistency.
Mr. Schiff, people on the border don't get to have a debate like this, like you and I do. It's not your time, Mr. Schiff. I'm reclaiming my time.
Mr. Gaetz has the time. Mr. Gaetz has the time.
You do.
Mr. Gaetz has the time.
Look, on the border, someone doesn't get to have this joyful little colloquy with you. A Border Patrol agent has to look at someone and assess whether or not they're going to let them in or not. And I'm just, for clarity, even though I'm not going to support your amendment, I'm going to support the bill. In the unlikely event that your amendment were to be adopted, I simply want to know if someone encounters someone from the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, whether or not the exception that your amendment affords would allow that or not.
Well, as I said, I'm using the existing definition, Mr. Gaetz. My question
does
to
that
you
definition
is,
include the
my
kingdom or
question
not?
to you is, will you live up to your anti-communist rhetoric? Will you live up to your anti-communist rhetoric, or is it just a lot of talk from you, Mr. Gaetz?
I don't think you have to blow a hole through the asylum system to oppose communism.
I guess it's just a lot of talk with you. Nothing more than a lot of empty talk.
I just want to know if the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia is included or excluded. How is this so difficult for you?
Well,
do you have any compassion for the people who would have to make this assessment on the border? I just want to know.
Would you care for me to read the code section to you?
Gladly.
The existence of a single political party organized on a dictatorial basis with so close an identity between such party and its policies and the government policies of the country in which it exists, and the party and the government constitute an indistinguishable unit, and the forcible suppression of opposition to such party. That is how the code currently defines a totalitarian party
would you define Saudi
and a
Arabia
totalitarian
that way or not?
dictatorship.
Would you define them that way or not, Adam?
So if you wanted to know, read the code. But the question is not, the question is not whether you can read the code. The question is whether you stand for anything, Mr. Gaetz. The question is, do you stand? Do you stand for anything? Does anything you say mean anything to you?
I merely am seeking your own ability to define your own amendment.
Are you really so soft on communism now, Mr. Gaetz? I am shocked.
Soft on communism? You're soft on definitions within your own bill.
You would prosecute.
Soft on the basics of the English language. Soft on the interpretation statute mechanisms by which a Border Patrol agent would have to apply this.
They won't.
You know what? A Border Patrol agent isn't going to have this.
Mercifully, the gentleman is out of time. Mercifully, the gentleman is out of time. Okay. Woo.
Should we have unanimous consent to continue?
No, everybody's out of time. Everybody's out of time. Does anyone seek recognition?
This is where Gaetz shines. He turns Schiff's own rhetoric back on him. Schiff constantly brands himself as a warrior against communism, a defender of human rights. But Gaetz calls him out. Will you live up to your anti-communist rhetoric, or is it just talk? Schiff squirms, deflects, and never gives a straight answer. The larger point here, and I think Gaetz understood this perfectly, is that Democrats often use lofty language about standing up to oppressive regimes, but when it comes time to legislate, it's about selective compassion. Schiff wants exceptions for some groups, but doesn't want to broaden it or even clarify how it applies. Meanwhile, the Border Patrol agents who actually have to enforce these rules are left with vague definitions and inconsistent standards. Gaetz doesn't let Schiff off the hook. He keeps pressing, keeps exposing the fact that Schiff is more interested in making a speech for the cameras than in writing clear policy. And by the end, Schiff tries to flip it back, accusing Gaetz of being soft on communism. But at that point, the damage is done. Schiff has already admitted he won't even support his own amendment. That's political weakness on full display. Schiff came in with a carefully crafted narrative, painting Republicans as heartless for wanting stricter asylum controls. But Gaetz shredded it by pointing out the hypocrisy and lack of consistency in Schiff's argument. Schiff wants to sound tough on communism, but when pressed, he can't define terms, can't answer basic questions, and ultimately can't stand behind his own proposal. This is why people are so frustrated with Washington. One side talks about compassion, the other side talks about consistency, and somewhere in between, the truth gets lost. But I want to hear from you. Do you think Gaetz exposed Schiff's hypocrisy here, or do you think Schiff was making a legitimate case for compassion? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget, like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share the video.